Long before modern tools, insulation, or reinforced concrete, there lived a people in the far northern edges of the world, where glaciers crawled across mountains and seas frothed with storms. The Vikings, seafarers and warriors by reputation, were also builders. Not just of ships, but of homes. Homes that had to withstand snow so heavy it crushed trees, wind so violent they could throw men to the ground, and bitter cold that could freeze livestock in their stalls overnight. Their lands were not abundant in stone like the southern regions of Europe. Instead, they had forests, vast, ancient woods of pine, spruce, and oak. From these, they crafted not just tools and ships, but the very structures they lived in. The Viking longhouse was more than just shelter, it was a feat of engineering and adaptation. But how did they do it? How did a civilization, centuries before modern architecture, build homes of wood that could outlast tempests and endure generations? The answer begins not with hammers, but with wisdom inherited through oral tradition, a knowledge passed from elder to apprentice, from chieftain to carpenter, etched not into books but into memory and muscle. It began with the land. The Vikings selected the site for a house with the same care they selected a site for battle. They considered wind direction, flood risk, proximity to resources, and the sheltering presence of hills or groves. A poorly chosen site was a death sentence in winter. Then came the materials. They didn't cut any tree, they selected trees grown slowly, where the grain was tight, strong and dense. Pine and spruce, native to Scandinavia, were naturally resinous and resistant to rot. Oak, though heavier, was used where maximum strength was needed. But what truly set Viking construction apart wasn't just the wood, it was what they did with it. A modern house relies on nails, screws, and brackets to hold its frame together. Viking houses relied on joinery, the ancient art of interlocking pieces of wood without metal fasteners. The Viking builders mastered mortise and tenon joints, lap joints, and dovetail joints, each designed to distribute stress and allow the house to move and settle without breaking. Their joinery was so tight, it was said that a knife couldn't slip between the timbers once assembled. They shaped their timbers using hand tools forged by their own blacksmiths, broad axes, adzes, and draw knives, each passed down from generation to generation. The axe was not only a weapon, but a carpenter's most trusted tool. In longhouses, the load-bearing structure was often a series of massive vertical posts, planted deep into the ground and joined by crossbeams. These beams were curved using fire and steam, mimicking the hulls of ships, providing not just strength but aerodynamic resistance to wind. Roofs were built steep and heavy. Why? To shed snow quickly, yes, but also to resist the upward pull of wind. Weight was protection, not liability. Their thatched or turf-covered roofs weighed tons, helping to keep the structure grounded even in the harshest weather. Insulation came from within. Walls were packed with straw, mud, or moss. Turf was layered over roofing to provide heat. And the interiors, often shared with livestock during winter, maintained warmth through body heat and a central fire hearth. But perhaps the most remarkable thing was that these homes were not built by specialists. They were community-built, with every able hand, man, woman, or child, playing a role. This wasn't just architecture. It was survival woven into culture. To the modern eye, a Viking house may appear primitive, a wooden hut with a sloping roof. But to those who lived in them, it was a shield against chaos. One of the most unique aspects of Viking construction was their deference to nature. They didn't try to fight the landscape, they built with it. Foundations were laid not with concrete, but with stone pads or even sand to allow for ground movement. Wood was chosen based on how it grew. Trees on hillsides, twisted by wind, were stronger and naturally curved. These were ideal for arches and braces. Rather than forcing symmetry, they embraced organic imperfection. No two Viking houses were exactly alike because no two environments were. They adjusted length, height, orientation, even door placement, based on microclimate and weather patterns. Over time, certain methods became sacred. The width between roof beams had to follow specific proportions. The curve of a supporting post was copied again and again. These were not guesses. They were codified over centuries of trial, loss, and adaptation. In Iceland, where forests were scarce, they adapted again, using driftwood, turf, and even whalebone to create their homes. The Viking resilience was matched only by their inventiveness. What they built wasn't just functional. It was symbolic. The home was called langus or longhouse, a name that spoke of lineage. It was the center of life, law, feasting, and legacy. Children were born under its roof. Elders died by its hearth. Every beam carried history. One of the greatest tests of Viking home construction was not the passage of time, but the chaos of war and the violence of nature. Raiding was a central part of Viking life. Villages had to be defensible, not just against invaders but against raiding parties of their own kin. A well-built house wasn't just a shelter, it was a stronghold. Doors were thick, beams reinforced. Even if a roof collapsed in storm or siege, the wall posts would stand, often sunk so deep that time couldn't uproot them. There are remnants today, buried beneath centuries of soil, where archaeologists find nothing but upright posts, still holding their place like silent sentinels. Moreover, Viking homes were modular and reparable. In the wake of battle or fire, a longhouse could be rebuilt using the same frame. Timbers were treated with oils or animal fat to resist rot. Roofs could be dismantled and rehatched within days. Their modularity gave them an edge that modern prefab homes struggle to emulate. The cold was another enemy. Temperatures in Viking lands could drop below -30 degrees Celsius. Yet people survived, thrived even, inside wooden homes heated only by a central fire. How? By minimizing airflow, sealing gaps with animal pelts or moss, and clustering activities around the hearth. Chimneys were rare. Instead, smoke filtered through the thatch, insulating the roof and killing pests. It sounds suffocating, but it worked. Efficient, warm, and life-sustaining. They didn't need concrete. They didn't need steel. They needed knowledge, and they had it, etched into every inch of every timber. One of the more mysterious yet fascinating aspects of Viking architecture lies in the geometry and proportions they instinctively followed. Though they left no written blueprints, the dimensions of their homes reveal an understanding of balance, strength, and harmony that echoes principles found in nature. Viking longhouses typically ranged between 15 to 30 meters long, but they were never built haphazardly. The ratio of length to width was carefully considered. Builders used body measurements, like the length of a man's arm or foot, as units, creating modular spaces that felt both spacious and structurally sound. The placement of posts was no accident. The main vertical supports were spaced evenly, often using the distance between two forearms or strides. This not only distributed weight evenly but also allowed the walls to withstand lateral forces from strong winds. Curved beams, shaped over heated stones or soaked in water to bend naturally, were arranged to create what might now be called load-bearing arches. These arches could resist compression and bending much better than straight beams. Inside, the roof frame's symmetrical yet flexible design allowed the whole house to sway slightly in storms rather than crack. This flexibility was crucial in northern climates where the freeze-thaw cycle constantly stressed materials. The Vikings also used natural landmarks as alignments. Some houses faced the rising sun, symbolizing renewal, while others were angled to shield entrances from prevailing winds. In this way, Viking homes weren't just shelters, they were living structures, integrated deeply into the rhythms of nature and human life. Building a strong wooden house was impossible without understanding wood itself. The Vikings were master woodworkers, their craftsmanship stemming from intimate knowledge of tree species, wood grain, and seasonal cycles. They harvested timber in winter, when sap was low and wood less likely to warp. Once cut, logs were carefully dried, sometimes for years, to prevent cracking and shrinking after construction. Preparation involved more than just cutting logs. They hewed timber flat on at least two sides, turning round logs into squared beams, which fit tightly together. Tools used in this process were simple but effective. The broadaxe could slice large chunks cleanly, the adze carved and smoothed surfaces, the knife shaped smaller elements like pegs or wedges. Interestingly, the Vikings rarely used metal nails. Instead, they fashioned wooden pegs and tree nails that swelled when wet, locking beams securely. This technique allowed the house to expand and contract naturally with temperature changes, preventing the wood from splitting. Even the bark wasn't wasted. Stripped bark was woven into ropes or used as temporary roofing during repairs. Wood was more than material, it was a living resource treated with reverence. Every knot and grain was studied for strength or flexibility. Logs were chosen for specific parts of the house, heavy oaks for posts, lighter pine for walls, and resin-rich spruce for roofing. This profound relationship between the Vikings and wood made their homes resilient and enduring, even in harsh climates. Viking houses were not built by lone carpenters in silent workshops. Construction was a community event, deeply embedded with ritual and social significance. When a new longhouse was planned, the entire village often came together, each person contributing labor, tools, or materials. Men and women worked side by side, some fetching wood, others preparing turf or thatch. The raising of the main frame, called the bigning, was a festive occasion. It was accompanied by songs, prayers to the gods, and feasting. Elders blessed the beams, invoking protection and prosperity for those who would dwell inside. This ritualized construction strengthened bonds and ensured knowledge was shared across generations. Young apprentices learned from elders not just how to build, but why each step mattered. Some houses included carved runes or symbols on key beams, believed to protect the home from evil spirits or bring good luck. These carvings were subtle, hidden in places only builders knew. Even the layout of the house had cultural meaning. The place of honor, usually the seat closest to the fire, was reserved for the chieftain or respected elder. Sleeping quarters, storage areas, and stables were carefully arranged to reflect social hierarchy and practical needs. This intertwining of community, spirituality, and function made Viking homes much more than physical structures. They were centers of identity, safety, and culture. The Vikings are renowned for their ships, which sailed across oceans with unmatched skill and speed. It is no coincidence that many innovations from shipbuilding found their way into house construction. The same techniques used to shape a flexible, resilient hull were adapted to make roofs and walls that could bend without breaking. For example, steam bending, heating wood over fire or hot stones to make it pliable, allowed craftsmen to create curved beams for roofs and arches. This gave longhouses a strength that straight beams could not match. Joinery techniques like clinker, overlapping planking, used in ship hulls, influenced how walls were assembled. Overlapping planks shed water more effectively and added rigidity. The tools and skills of shipwrights, such as precise measuring, shaping, and fitting, translated directly to the carpenter's work on land. Even the mindset was similar. Both ship and house had to survive storms, shifting ground, and constant use. This cross-pollination of maritime and architectural expertise made Viking wooden homes uniquely strong and adaptable. Centuries have passed since the Viking Age, but their wooden homes continue to inspire awe. Archaeologists have uncovered remnants of longhouses buried under layers of earth and moss, revealing the incredible durability of their construction. Many post holes and timber imprints show that the Vikings' careful methods, deep-set posts, interlocking joints, and steep roofs, allowed their homes to endure for generations. In some places, reconstructions based on these findings have withstood modern weather for decades. Modern builders studying Viking techniques appreciate how well these ancient homes dealt with thermal insulation, wind resistance, and structural flexibility, all without synthetic materials. The lessons learned echo today in sustainable architecture. Using local materials, working with natural forces instead of against them, and designing for longevity rather than disposability. The Viking legacy lives on not just in stories of conquest and exploration, but in the very principles of resilient, thoughtful building, a testimony to how humans can create strength from simplicity. In the end, Viking homes were far more than wood joined to wood. They were manifestations of a people's connection to their land, their community, and their gods. Building a home was an act of faith, resilience, and identity. It combined craftsmanship, knowledge of nature, and social cohesion. The Vikings proved that strength does not come from complex technology alone, but from deep understanding, respect for materials, and communal effort. Their wooden longhouses stood firm not because they used iron nails or concrete foundations, but because they listened, to the trees, to the winds, to each other, and built in harmony with the world around them. That harmony created homes that sheltered more than bodies. They sheltered history, culture, and the spirit of a people whose legacy endures in every plank and beam that has ever weathered the northern storms.